You have certain communities, they have the Yom Tehilim. They do it on Shabbat or on a weekday, and the whole day, everybody in the Bet Knesset, they're reading, the men are reading Tehilim all day. A person, again, a person who has the knowledge to learn Torah all day should not join these. Why? Because he has the capability of learning Gemara and Halacha, and he should spend his time on that over Tehilim. Not that he should never say Tehilim, but that should not be the majority of his learning. So when they do this thing in the community, they say Tehilim all day, and also they do taanit dibur. Taanit dibur means that a person refrains from talking the whole time, meaning the whole day, or can some people do half a day, they don't talk to anybody. They don't say, hi, how are you? They don't, they'll nod their head or they won't talk. Unless you're learning, if you're learning with someone, you could, in the discussion of learning, you could talk. But regular mundane conversation, they do not say at all. So taanit dibur in general is a very, very good thing to do, even if you're not doing Yom Tehilim. Take once in a while and say, okay, you know what? For the next, 5 hours, I'm not talking. Now, you have to, if you're around family members or other people, they need to know, you're gonna look weird if you just start going, You need to inform people before you're doing it if it's possible, so you don't look weird to people. But generally speaking, that's what he would do. He wouldn't talk, and therefore, it helps you in controlling your speech, and also in learning, even like you're learning in a kollel or in a yeshiva, and you do taanit dibur, meaning that when you go to get a coffee break, you don't talk to people. You just come, you go get your coffee, come back and sit down and continue learning. No chatting in the middle. Psychologically, the less you speak mundane, the less information you have in your head. Now, a lot of us today, especially in the technology that we're overburdened with information in our heads. And that's why people can't express themselves as much as they used to. What do I mean? You have news, you have the internet, you have all of these things that a lot of the times it's unnecessary to hear all this information. And with that, I want to talk about something very important, and I'm going to tie it all together. Watching the news or reading sitting down with the New York Times with a cup of coffee, what the classic person does, classic American does. It is a problem, and I'll tell you why. First of all, halachically, reading a newspaper, which is not a Jewish, written by a chacham, and I'll tell you why. Meaning the chacham, the rabbi, he is in charge of the newspaper's content. If you don't have someone who is reviewing that, a lot of lashon hara could be written, and that's what a newspaper is. Basically, he did this, she said that, and if it's about Jewish people, it will be lashon hara. So a newspaper can get you used to talking like that, because you're just like a Gemara. When you read it, it teaches you how to think analytically and clearly. When you read a newspaper all the time, or you watch the news or go on websites, you're learning this thinking style of talking about other people. I was in a rabbinical convention where they said that it's almost impossible to run a successful newspaper or news website without speaking Lashon Hara. Because what are you going to talk about? Okay, the weather, and then some good news. This person had this person got married. This person had a brit milah. How much can you say? We want to get into the meat of it, the politics and world events. You're going to end up talking lashon hara, or just negative things. Now, about the negative things, you're just filling your mind with all this information, and you're not able to think clearly throughout the day. It also causes you to get sad. It causes you to be worried. And I want to tell you a story that I heard from Rav Ezra Katzin, that he went to a man who reads a newspaper every morning, and he asked him a question. The year just went by. You read the newspaper every day, right? He's like, yes. How much time do you spend on the newspaper? He said, I read it 1 hour a day. Okay. I want you to tell me, sir, In this whole year that went by, what happened? Tell me all the news you remember. So he spoke for about 4 or 5 minutes. He said this happened, and there was this war, and then this and that. After 5 minutes, he said, that's it. He talked maybe for another 50 seconds, added a few more things. And he told him after that, I want you to know, you spend 1 hour a day reading newspapers every day. And what? All you remember is 5 minutes of information. All those hours of your life that you spent was for no reason. And that's very sad. We do that. We all do this to some extent. Rav Yosef, who was a big Rav and a leader, and he ran the Shas movement in Israel. He read a kosher newspaper because he was in politics. He was advising in politics to his party. He had to know some of the things that are going on. So he would read. I don't know if he would read just the headlines or whatever it was, but he did read some of the things that are going on in the world because they had to deal with that in the politics. And he said that the times when I was doing that, my learning was weaker than the times when I wasn't dealing with the current events. Obviously, even his weaker learning is 1,000 times better than the average person. But even it affected him. Now, he had to do it for what he was doing, and I'm definitely sure that he was reading a kosher outlet. But what about those who read a non-kosher newspaper or regular news? It is definitely forbidden to listen or to read those things. It's brought in Yalkut Yosef, and the reason is that let's take for example the New York Times. New York Times it tells you some regular news. All of a sudden, it'll tell you something that's heretical. It could make fun of God. It could make fun of religion. It could make fun of Jewish people. Because of that reason, you cannot read a newspaper because even that 1% chance that you're going to read something heretical in these newspapers is going to affect you. And again, Jewish newspapers, some of them also have Lashon Hara. So you have to be very careful. Now really, Chacham Eliyahu Nataneli told me about 20 years ago. He said to me, whatever you need to know, you're going to know. You don't need to read the news. And really, when I would not read the news, the main things that are going on, you usually hear. So you run into someone, you say, hey, you heard what happened? It's really true. Secondly, what is it going to make a difference for me to read a newspaper? Is it my job? Do I have to know what's going on? No. I'm not in politics, or I'm not in a position where I have to know all these things in detail about what happened. If at best you just read the headlines, that's the thing. It takes 1 minute. That would be the best if you really have to know. But when you genuinely read a news article, listen to the news, all the other details about, for example, there was a stabbing attack. Let's say. How many people died, and who's in the hospital, and what time it happened, and all of those little details are not going to make a difference in your life. Even really the headline might not make a difference in your life. So we have to think about that. I'm not trying to say this in a primitive way to cut yourself off from the world. I'm saying it in a practical, logical way that a lot of times you don't need to know what's going on. You'll know anyway. And I'm not saying to shy away from it, but to go and invest hours of your life on a daily basis or a weekly basis to read up on these things which you're not going to even use, it's a waste of time.